These twin-engine flying boats, caught here in beautiful formation flight, were conceived, designed, and built by the Consolidated Aircraft Corporation, and from their inception were destined to become the outstanding patrol bomber. Their load-carrying capacity, their speed, range, and reliability have been amply proven in extended flight, and their striking performance won for their builders the largest order for twin-engine flying boats ever placed. More than 2 days to travel distances are from 2,500 to well over 3,000 miles non-stop. A truly remarkable record of flying boat stamina and consistent performance. San Diego, California, with its ideal year-round flying weather, landlocked harbor, and municipally owned flying field. Here in the engineering department is grouped one of the outstanding engineering forces in the manufacture of aircraft today. It was from this department that the famous PBY flying boat design emanated. It is here that airplanes are conceived, stressed, and engineered months before they are publicized to be brought carefully, methodically, and painstakingly to perfection. The engineering drawings and specifications are now translated into orders for materials, and the sequence of operations is determined. Meanwhile, quantities of high-grade raw materials are arriving for use in the building of the airplanes. These are carefully unloaded, checked in at the stockroom, given a thorough inspection, and then dispatched to the various departments for the many processes to be performed before the material as finished parts enters the airplane. Into the anodic tanks go all aluminum and aluminum alloy parts for the anodic treatment. This process forms on every surface a protective film of aluminum oxide, a tough, corrosion-resisting basic protection which becomes a part of the metal itself and which makes an excellent base for paint. Inspection plays a highly important part in the production of these record-breaking planes. The inspection department carries on the inspection of every part of the plane, from the raw materials at the very start, straight through each operation, process, and assembly, to the finished PBY as it rolls off the production line. To maintain the highest standard of workmanship, each part and assembly is checked after each manufacturing sequence. Thus, there is built into the plane an insurance for record-breaking performance. Hardness testing machines instantly determine the exact heat-treated qualities of every metal part used in these boats. These machines are both fast and accurate in operation. Micrometers and gauges are used to check fits and tolerances. As a precaution, to ensure that the parts are measured with accurate tools, these checking devices are checked periodically on the super micrometer or master checking device. More than a surface inspection is necessary on the important structural parts. The grain of the metal of which these parts are made must be carefully examined for flaws. Visual inspection will, of course, reveal the obvious flaws, but for these highly loaded steel assemblies, it is important to check for defects that can't be seen. To accomplish this, the simple magnaflux method is used. First, the steel part is magnetized, then it is placed in an agitated solution of light oil containing powdered iron. After a brief immersion in this solution, the part is removed, and all flaws, even those ordinarily invisible to the naked eye, will be clearly marked with a dark streak. Thus, each airplane structure possesses the ability to take rough handling from either man or the elements, plowing and smashing into rough water at high speed, bouncing and shaking under the impacts, but emerging each time staunch and ready for more without a sign of the pounding it has taken. These automatic rivet-making machines, cutting steadily away at coils of dural wire, biting off exact lengths, upsetting the heads and repeating, can turn out as many as 1 million rivets a week. 1 million rivets per week. Emerging from the machines, the rivets are placed in the heat-treat furnace for a timed period, and as they leave the furnace, they are automatically quenched in cold water. When they are subjected to this treatment, they become relatively soft and are in proper condition for use. Taken from the automatic heat-treating machine, they are stored under low temperature in a large electric refrigerator where they will remain soft indefinitely. If the rivets are exposed to normal temperatures, they soon become hard and develop their full strength. To make them more accessible to the workmen, they are distributed to smaller electric refrigerators located throughout the factory. As needed, the rivets are taken from the refrigerators located adjacent to the work and riveted into place. Within a few hours, the rivets harden and contribute their full strength to the airplane structure. Steel tubing of heavy gauge is run between 3 powerful rolls to form the engine mount ring. Straight to begin with, the steel tubing is given a slight curvature on the first pass through the machine. Then, each time it is passed between the rolls are tightened a bit more until the desired curvature is secured. Kinking of the tubing is thus prevented, and the tube emerges finally smooth and of the exact radius desired. Most of the metal parts of the planes are formed in the soft or annealed state and must be heat-treated to gain their full strength. Soft aluminum alloy parts are soaked in a gas-fired molten salt bath, then quickly removed and quenched in water. When quenched, these parts air harden to develop their full strength within a few hours. Steel parts, according to their composition and ultimate use, receive various heat treatments. Some are quenched in oil. All heat treating is kept under accurate control by a battery of automatic recording pyrometers to ensure uniform results. The steel tube engine mounts are heated in gas-fired furnaces and, when removed, are immediately bolted to a rigid table for air quenching. Bolting the work down during cooling prevents the mounts from warping out of shape. This is the stabilizer unit in the process of assembly. It approaches more nearly its familiar appearance after covering and the fin and stabilizer tips have been added to the unit. The rudders are assembled and riveted up in a vertical jig, and the wing trailing edges for the center section are likewise assembled in the vertical position. All movable control surfaces and the trailing edges of the wings are fabric covered. The cloth used for this purpose is a light, strong, uniform grade of unbleached long staple cotton, and attachment to the surface is accomplished by stitching a reinforcing tape over each rib. A knotted stitch is used which cannot become untied and which serves to evenly distribute the loads and likewise prevent chafing, wearing, or ballooning of the fabric. Hand sewing using a strong waxed thread is employed in closing up the control surfaces or to fit around an irregular shape where machine sewing is impractical. By using this method, the fabric is pulled uniformly snug over every portion of the surface. The PBY spars are the main structural members within the wings and are assembled in special jigs. The webbing, aluminum alloy extrusions, fittings, and all other appurtenances produced by the various departments are assembled here. The work accomplished in these assembly fixtures encompasses all of the necessary assembly operations except riveting. Before riveting, the spar is disassembled, sent to the paint department to be anodized and primed. Upon its return, it is reassembled. Screws are used to hold the assembly together temporarily while the rivets are inserted and driven. Cleaned, painted, and riveted, the spars are now complete. From above the wing center section assembly line, some idea of the scope of operations in the building of these units can be gleaned. This part of the plant is devoted exclusively to the assembly of the wing center sections. The leading edges, trailing edges, outer panels, and ailerons are assembled elsewhere. These wing center sections are built in steel assembly fixtures which hold the work in a vertical position so that a number of men can work in a comfortable standing position both on the upper and lower surfaces of the wing at the same time. First placed in the assembly fixture is the rear spar, which is guided into position and made fast in the jig. Then come the wing ribs and bulkheads to give the wing its shape. The bulkheads also form a portion of the integrally built fuel tanks. When all are in place, the front wing beam is brought to the assembly fixture and raised with pneumatic hoists to its position at the top of the fixture. The fuel tanks of the PBY, having a combined capacity of 1,750 gallons, are actually built in as an integral section of the wing structure, a design feature that has several outstanding advantages, one of which is that only a portion of the weight necessary for separately built tanks is required. Although the original airplane of this type established several distance flight records, the standard production PBYs have attained an unequaled reputation for non-stop mass flights over long distances so repeatedly that they are no longer front-page news, but are proof of the progressive engineering built into these airplanes. The wing center section, weighing approximately 1 ton at this stage of assembly, is raised out of the assembly fixture and is transported overhead by monorail to another portion of the assembly line. The 2 black dots in the center of this portion of the wing are manholes which permit access to the interior of the fuel tanks. Arriving at its allotted place on the assembly line, the center section is lowered and rolled to a horizontal position so that the remaining assembly operations can be completed. Immediately after the wing center section is leveled, the sub-assembled parts of the engine nacelle structure are brought to the front of the wing assembly, and the work of their attachment begins. Slid into place and held firmly in place with locating fixtures, the attachment of the nacelle braces and preformed skin is made directly to the front spar and center section skin, so that the nacelles become a part of the wing itself. Then follows the operation of fitting the leading edges to the wing center section. Inasmuch as all leading edges and trailing edge sections are completely detachable, drill jigs are used so that replacements may be made with ease in the future life of the boat should the occasion arise. The operations on the wing having been completed, it is now rolled out and heads for the finishing and final assembly departments. Meanwhile, the belt frames and bulkheads of the hull are taking shape. The belt frames are the intermediate formers, while the bulkheads are the main formers. The bulkheads, besides giving form to the hull, also serve to divide it into watertight compartments, so that the airplane becomes a truly seaworthy boat when on the water, and, like a surface vessel, is fully capable of coping with any emergency. The building of the belt frames and bulkheads progresses in much the same manner as the building of the spar assemblies. The smaller parts, made elsewhere in the plant, are brought to the assembly fixtures, placed, secured in position, and drilled. Then, held together with screws, the entire assembly is lifted from the fixture and the riveting operations carried out. When the two major bulkheads have been fastened together with screws, they are raised to the vertical fixtures where the workmen may carry on, 2 tiers deep, the drilling and fitting operations. These are the two bulkheads which attach directly to the wing and the wing lift struts. They also form the backbone of the superstructure. With the bulkheads and belt frames completed, the first operation in the assembly of the hull begins. Finished bulkheads and belt frames are lowered into the large assembly fixtures bottom side up, for the first work in the fabrication of the hull is accomplished while it is resting in the upside-down position. Many of these upside-down assembly fixtures stand side by side on the assembly floor, and in the inverted position, the long, graceful lines of the PBY design begin to form as the belt frames, bulkheads, and keel sections find their places and the bottom stringers are added. Plating the hull bottom comes next. To ensure a watertight union between the stringers and the bottom plating, a strip of fabric impregnated with marine glue is laid over the stringers before the skin is applied. To draw the plates down tightly against the stringers while the riveting is carried on, small wooden wedges are used. With the bottom practically completed, the growing hull with temporary truss work to prevent its buckling is raised from the upside-down assembly fixture, rolled to a right-side-up position, and moved to a waiting fixture on the right-side-up assembly line. At this juncture, an excellent idea of the interior construction of the hull may be gained. Notice that these bulkheads divide the hull into 5 watertight compartments so that these boats can battle against inclement weather. In the side-up assembly fixtures, the upper form of the hull develops rapidly as stringers on the sides and deck are fitted into place. After the stringers have been made fast to the bulkheads and belt frames, the skin is riveted to the structure. Up forward, the cockpit enclosure, an assembly of windows and framework, is brought to the ship and fastened to the growing hull above the pilot's compartment. Aft, the fins are built integrally with the upper portion of the hull and are faired into it. Up on the fin, high above the waterline, providing ample clearance for handling on rough water, will rest the full cantilever stabilizing and control surfaces. From these control surfaces, the steel control cables are brought inside the fin and on down through the hull, away from all spray. The anchor stowage box, anchor winch, nose bumper, snubbing post, mooring walks, and similar surface boat equipment, all material aids in mooring, anchoring, and beaching the craft, are built into the bow. Above the hull in the superstructure, the flight mechanic station takes form. From here, the mechanic will regulate the retracting floats, the majority of the engine controls, and check the engine instruments, thus relieving the pilot to some extent in the handling of this giant craft. Nearing completion on the assembly line, the graceful hulls are lifted out of their assembly fixtures. The fin, superstructure, pilot's enclosure, turret, and hatches have been secured in place, and the hull is ready for watertight testing. The hull is supported on a stout framework, the water poured into each compartment, and the outside of the hull inspected for leakage. The hull depictions necessary in building of hulls for these famous boats. In the foreground, the hulls are but bare skeletons consisting of bulkheads and keels in their upside-down fixtures. The stringers have been added to some, the plating to others. Along the line and the right side up fixtures are stringers on side and deck. Some have plating with sub-assemblies added. Farthest along, the hulls, virtually finished at this stage of the assembly, lack only last-minute additions to their structure and the watertight testing operation before they are ready to leave the department. Immediately following assembly, the hulls are moved to the finishing department and stripped of the priming coat, which has served for protection during assembly. This primer is removed down to the metal, but this does not, of course, affect the anodic film protection, which was made a part of the metal itself when the material was anodized. After the primer is removed, the hull is washed and rinsed, and then a fresh coat of primer applied so that the base upon which the subsequent finishing coats are applied will be as near perfect as is possible. The wing center section structure likewise receives the same careful treatment when it enters the finishing department. In the finishing department, the application of paint and lacquers is conducted under ideal working conditions. Warmed and filtered air is forced into this department by huge blowers, and a constant positive pressure is maintained so that no foreign matter can gain entrance. Scrupulous cleanliness prevails with all lacquer dust and paint fumes sucked from the paint booths by powerful fans. Such precautions before and during painting ensure that the finish will be of the highest quality and afford the greatest protection possible. Clear airplane dope is applied to the fabric-covered control surfaces, the ailerons, and wing trailing edges to pull the fabric taut and add strength to the unit. Tape is doped over the reinforcing tape previously applied over all ribs to ensure maximum strength and smoothness. To facilitate the operation, work of routine inspection and servicing of the airplanes, pertinent instructions and markings are applied to the finished surfaces with decalcomania transfers. These are applied tacky and the paper backing washed off. As the hulls are turned out by the finishing department, they are moved to another section of the plant devoted entirely to final assembly operations. Rolling easily on its beaching gear to its allotted place in the line, the hull is now ready for its wings, engines, and tail surfaces. The wing center section, built for interchangeability and perfect alignment, is brought to the hull and gently lowered on to. These twin double-row 14-cylinder power plants generate well over 1,000 horsepower each and enable the PBY on one engine alone to maintain full flight with full load. More remarkable, however, is the ability of this same ship not only to take off with one engine, but to sustain flight with sufficient fuel aboard to fly 1,300 miles. The weather which prevails in San Diego the year-round is ideal for the completion of many of the final assembly operations out of doors. The nearly completed ships are wheeled out and signaled to their positions in the paved yard. Work platforms are shifted into place, and final assembly operations are continued. Constant speed propellers, which automatically meet changing conditions and increase the flying efficiency of the airplane, are hoisted to the engines and slipped on the propeller shafts. The outer panels of the wing are brought to the center panel, which we followed through construction, and are attached. These outer panels contain the wingtip floats, and with the integral fuel tanks of the center section, constant speed propellers, and other features, contribute to the outstanding performance records of this airplane. As the plane's near completion, United States Navy insignias, numbers, and squadron emblems are added on the hull, the wings, and the tail surfaces for identification. These boats are used by the Navy for bombing, scouting, and patrol work. Flying far at sea, they can maintain close or open formation, as many have done repeatedly in the establishment of the massed flight records, or they can be flown on individual missions. Powerful radios permit constant communication with each other or with shore stations. Contributing to the efficiency of the PBYs are the retractable wingtip floats, which, when the airplane is flying, are retracted into the wing to reduce drag. When down, they serve as air brakes in the approach for a landing, and in addition provide wingtip buoyancy for maneuvering on the surface of protected waters or in the open sea. The PBY design is not only an airplane of outstanding merit, but when on the water is a boat fully capable of coping with any open sea contingency that might be encountered during its operation. The controls are now given a first inspection to see that they are functioning smoothly. The ship is fueled in preparation for starting the engines on their initial 15-minute shakedown run-in. Then, following a second inspection and checking of all the controls and instruments, the engines are given a second run-in of 45 minutes to ensure perfect function. After a final checkup, the plane is ready to leave the plant. From the plant where the personnel, facilities, and machinery for the building of the most modern aircraft are equal to those to be found any place in the world, have come the PBYs. Delivery operations always attract interest. As the planes are made ready on the ramp for their first taste of the waters of the bay and a delivery, in this case to the United States Navy. The full Navy crew accepting delivery of the PBY climb aboard. The Navy pilot signals the flight mechanic to turn over the engines while he peers out to watch the familiar operation. The Navy operators find the engines take hold easily and begin their run-in for the warming-up operation before they signal their readiness to enter the water and the actual delivery takes place. Of the engine controls, the pilot is concerned only with the throttles and propeller governors. The flight mechanic handles the starting, mixture control, fuel flow, engine cowl, flap regulation, and so forth. He also controls the raising and lowering of the floats, receiving his orders from the pilot by means of the visual signal system or the interphone. The beaching gear enables the PBY to be handled with ease on land. It can even operate from a sand beach, and the gear can be removed and stowed aboard with ease. A familiar sight on the bay at San Diego has been the takeoffs of the PBYs, starting the long-distance, non-stop massed flights, which demonstrated their outstanding performance. So far as is known, the PBY is the only twin-engine flying boat which has actually taken off from the water with one engine completely stopped. Not only has the PBY achieved this feat, but it is actually taken off on one engine with sufficient fuel aboard for a non-stop flight of 1,300 miles. An unparalleled demonstration of reserve power. Is it any wonder that these remarkable records have been achieved? The following outstanding flights were made during 1937, 38, and 39. These airplanes equipped as patrol bombers for the United States Navy are fast and powerful. Operating from established Navy bases, PBY patrol bomber flying boats can patrol 60 million square miles, 1/3 of the Earth's surface, as the eyes of the fleet in defense of the nation. PBY flying boats daily establish new records as routine operations of the United States Navy. Model 28, as the commercial models are known, have circled the Earth at its maximum circumference, have crossed oceans and continents non-stop, and have operated in climes from the tropics to the North Pole, all without undue incident. Beyond comparison with any contemporary service type, the PBYs have amazing flexibility. They are completely seaworthy, possess a range in excess of 4,000 miles, and remarkable stamina under all conditions. An outstanding achievement in themselves. These twin-engine flying boats suggest the future potentialities that will emerge from the combined engineering progressiveness, facilities for manufacture, and the building skill of the Consolidated Aircraft Corporation.
It may not have been the quickest or the most visually appealing aircraft in World War II. It wasn't the easiest plane to handle, yet the PBY Catalina flying boat became one of the most dependable and respected aircraft ever made.
It was a good airplane. Low altitude, rough weather. She was a tough little beast.
In service, this straightforward, sturdy, and adaptable aircraft proved to be the perfect workhorse across the globe. Capable of operating on both land and water, the Catalina transported supplies, performed long-range patrols, and rescued countless stranded sailors and airmen.
That airplane did everything it was asked to do, and more.
However, it also possessed a darker, more threatening side. In the Atlantic, Catalinas bombed and sank numerous German submarines. In the Pacific, black-painted Catalinas swooped on Japanese ships under cover of night. In 1907, a young motorcycle builder from Hammondsport, New York, developed a fascination with the thrill of flight. His name was Glenn H. Curtiss, and he would be forever remembered as the creator of a unique type of aircraft. Curtiss was a natural-born inventor. After various experiments, he developed an aircraft capable of taking off and landing on water, the flying boat. It wasn't long before the military took notice. In World War I, flying boats were heavily used as reconnaissance planes, primarily for submarine spotting. This marked the start of a new era in naval warfare.
In the First World War, the U.S. Navy really didn't have a land plane capability, so the backbone of U.S. Navy operations was the flying boat. And during World War I, they developed the NC flying boat, which was designed to be a long-range aircraft capable of flying great distances across the Atlantic, which, in fact, one of them did in May of 1919.
After the war, hundreds of surplus planes were sold at low prices, sparking the aviation passion that had gripped America. The flying boat's ability to operate on any calm water surface granted it nearly limitless range, expanding new horizons for aviation. When Pan American launched its luxurious clipper flights to Central and South America, the golden age of the flying boat had dawned. Much like Grand Ocean liners, Pan Am clippers of the 1930s allowed the wealthy to travel in elegance to far-off places. The Navy also envisioned a strategic role for long-range aircraft to patrol the world's oceans, providing early warnings of any threats to American interests. Soon, the flying boat became an essential element of national defense planning.
The main advantages of the flying boat over wheeled aircraft, certainly in the early stages before the advent of the aircraft carrier, was the great range that they had. Plus, they could land almost anywhere, so they could set down in any number of forward bases. And so that's what made the flying boat a real advantageous platform for Navy operations, particularly in the Pacific, where the Navy was definitely looking towards fighting the next war.
In 1933, the Navy invited proposals for a new long-range patrol aircraft. The Consolidated Aircraft Corporation, already experienced in designing flying boats for the Navy, was eager to win this critical contract. Their lead designer was a skilled engineer named Isaac Macklin Ladden, known to everyone as Mac. In the early 1930s, most planes were still biplanes, with fabric-covered wings held up by a web of steel wires. In a bold approach, Mac Ladden designed a metal monoplane. Its vast wing was mounted on a single pylon above the fuselage, anchored to the hull with only 4 struts, 2 on each side. All flying boats required outrigger floats for stability on water, but these floats became a drawback in the air, creating drag and reducing overall performance. Mac Ladden devised a clever solution, designing floats that folded up during flight to become the wingtips, minimizing drag while adding lift. The Navy was duly impressed, and in June 1935, Consolidated secured a contract for 60 aircraft, the largest military order since World War I. The aircraft that rolled off the production line would become iconic, identified by the code letters PBY, P for patrol, B for bomber, and Y, the prefix for Consolidated. The PBY was a sizable plane with a striking appearance.
Here were all those great big, beautiful PBYs. It was love at first sight. And I said, well, I've got to fly those.
Along came a PBY, and it was gracefully soaring above us. And it was so beautiful. In my mind, it was like a soaring eagle. It just soared and made slow turns. And later on, I found out what a devil it could be in combat.
PBY, the Navy calls her. Back in 1935, the first PBYs took to the water and the air. Commonplace today, but then a milestone in the history of aviation.
It became best known as the Catalina, or simply the Cat. With a cruising speed of just over 130 miles per hour, the twin-engine Catalina wasn't especially fast, but it offered remarkable endurance, with a range exceeding 3,000 miles and the ability to stay airborne for more than 15 hours. Though it was always susceptible to attack, the PBY's main armament was formidable. It included 2 heavy machine guns mounted in blisters on each side of the rear fuselage. Although initially designed for patrol missions, the PBY could carry 4 1,000-pound bombs or 2 torpedoes, significantly boosting its tactical value for the Navy.
The PBY did everything it was asked to do and more. It covered a lot of ground and it could remain aloft for a great deal of time. Basically, though, it was designed to spot the enemy fleet. Radar was just in its infancy then, and nothing could beat a pair of 2 human eyes in spotting the fleet and reporting it back to home base.
By the late 1930s, the world was becoming increasingly dangerous. In the Pacific, Japan was growing more powerful and aggressive, while in Europe, Hitler's Germany was rearming openly, building a navy to control the Atlantic. Britain and America watched with caution as tensions continued to rise. Both countries recognized that airborne early warning would be crucial in future conflicts. Most admirals still placed their confidence in large gun-armed warships, but a few suspected that air power would decide any upcoming war. They would soon see how accurate this belief was. September 1939, Europe is thrust into war. Britain's first line of defense was the Royal Navy. Many of its ships were equipped with seaplanes launched by catapult to scout beyond the horizon. The challenge was retrieving them. The open sea posed serious risks for landing an aircraft. Multi-engine, long-range patrol planes offered a safer alternative, but Britain's strained RAF didn't have nearly enough of them. In 1940, they ordered a fleet of PBYs to aid in patrolling the Atlantic. It was the RAF pilots who first named the aircraft Catalina. They appreciated the aircraft and soon realized that the B in PBY truly signified bomber. They began using their Catalinas to attack German U-boats. Since the start of the war, Nazi submarine wolf packs had prowled the Atlantic and the Mediterranean, sinking numerous British vessels. The Catalina quickly became a crucial asset in the fight against U-boats, locating and destroying them in growing numbers. However, Germany's formidable surface fleet continued to pose a grave threat. In May 1941, the Cat played a role in securing a significant British naval victory. The Royal Navy was chasing the German battleship Bismarck, 42,000 tons of steel, and the pride of Hitler's battle fleet. In a clash west of Iceland, Bismarck had sunk the British battleship HMS Hood with a direct hit. Only 3 of her crew members survived. The Bismarck then disappeared into the fog.
Somewhere under that mystery of fog, the Bismarck was steaming under forced draft for a safe haven. Then a rift in the clouds, a telltale wake. A Catalina flashed the word, "Quarry sighted."
It was an RAF Catalina patrol plane from Coastal Command that finally tracked down the Bismarck. Its location was relayed, and Britain's Royal Navy moved in to finish the job. The Bismarck went down with only 115 of the 2,400 crew members surviving.
Britain had maintained her supremacy in the North Atlantic with the help of a plane designed to maintain United States supremacy in the Pacific.
The attack on the Bismarck clearly highlighted the value of long-range patrol aircraft in combat. The U.S. quickly took note.
The destruction of the Bismarck, that great and powerful ship, had to be accomplished to be true to the traditions of the British Royal Navy.
They played their part in a victory which is proudly marked up along with victories of the past, the greatest pursuit and kill in history.
The long-range Catalina was an ideal aircraft for ocean patrols, though getting it in and out of the water required cumbersome beaching gear, making the process slow and laborious. To address this issue, the PBY-5A was introduced, with A standing for amphibian. Featuring a retractable undercarriage, this version of the Cat was equally capable on land or sea. Catalinas were soon stationed at U.S. bases throughout the Pacific, from Midway to the Philippines and from Wake Island to Pearl Harbor. As Japan grew increasingly aggressive, the Navy intensified its daily reconnaissance flights. Then, on a calm Sunday morning in December 1941, Japan launched a surprise attack on the Pacific Fleet anchored at Pearl Harbor.
So I've seen them coming around one by one. They'd strafe and bomb, and then they make a circle and come around again. They must have made 3 or 4 passes on each attack. You couldn't believe it, and you didn't think it was happening. The whole sky was black with smoke. Everything was on fire, and there was dead people on the dock, and the oil was 3 feet thick on the water, and people were going around. It was utter confusion.
The assault not only crippled the American Pacific Fleet, but nearly obliterated the airborne patrol force, with 67 Catalinas severely damaged or destroyed.
They picked a beautiful time. Everybody was saluting the flag. And they weren't saluting their guns.
Pearl Harbor served as a harsh lesson for the Americans. Despite extensive long-range patrols, U.S. forces failed to spot the approaching Japanese fleet. In the aftermath, recruitment offices across the nation were flooded with young volunteers eager to join the fight.
I was very highly agitated at what happened out at Pearl Harbor. We weren't told too much about what happened other than it was a big blow to the fleet. And I joined the Navy the next day thinking that I got to go. December 8th, 1941, the day after Pearl Harbor. My father was going to be the big stopper in my mind. When I came home that afternoon, and he said, "How was school?" I gave him the papers that I needed to get his signature on. And he thought for a long time. And he said, "Well, I'm too old to go, and we're going to be at war." And he said, "You go." And he signed, with tears in his eyes.
Smoke from the burning wreckage at Pearl Harbor lingered for days. But with America now at war, Catalina crews, still reeling from the devastating loss, would soon be at the forefront.
The feel at that time was, we've got to do something, and we've got to do it fast.
Early in 1942, new Catalinas began rolling off the production lines to replace those lost at Pearl Harbor. As new orders flooded into the Consolidated factory, the demand for more workers grew in the race to accelerate production.
I put on my application that I'd worked with some radios, and of course the interviewer had a drawer that he opened up, and he said, "What's that?" I said, "It's a soldering iron." "What's that?" "That's a wire cutter." "You're an electrician." So I became an electrician, and that was when the company was building from very few people, just hiring all the time. And there at Consolidated, we were working 11 hours a day and 7 days a week.
The Cat quickly earned the respect and admiration of its crews. A standard PBY crew was composed of 8 members, a bombardier who also served as the bow gunner, a pilot and co-pilot, a navigator, a radio operator, a flight engineer, and 2 waist gunners. Bulkheads divided the plane into 7 watertight compartments. For long patrol flights, the central section was fitted with bunks and a galley to increase crew comfort. Mastering the specialized skill of flying a seaplane required extensive training.
Well, if you ever saw what I call a PBY driver, he had thick wrists and big muscles.
The controls were as big as barn doors, and it took a little bit of muscle to move them. It was unstable. She'd fall off on one wing, or the horse would wander unless you had to fly it every minute of the time. It had the smallest stabilizing tabs, which you had to constantly readjust. Every time somebody moved or the load shifted just a little bit, you had to readjust it. You couldn't relax very long in that airplane, not if you were flying it.
And the real trick on a seaplane landing at any time is to make sure you keep your wings level. You do not want to get afloat into the water at high speed, because it'll turn you around so fast it'll be a wreck.
When you come into land, why it's a high angle, and then boom, down you come, and it really hits hard, you know, because you haven't got no control all of a sudden. Why you put it into just about a stall just when you about to get to the water, just splat, you come down pretty hard.
It landed with a great big splash. Not a touchdown, it was a beautiful landing. But if you didn't keep coming back all the time till you got that big fat duck plowing through the water, then she'd go off the water because there weren't any flaps, anything to kill the speed. That's the one thing about that thing that I considered pretty vicious.
While the PBY had its drawbacks, it also had considerable strengths. As crews learned to operate it, they developed a deep respect for this durable workhorse.
It's a good airplane, very good. Low altitude, rough weather, rain squalls, and she was a tough little beast.
Like a giant seabird, the Catalina glided above the ocean on its lengthy solitary patrols. Its crew would spend hours out of sight of land, scanning the water for the faint sign of a submarine periscope or a downed pilot adrift in a life raft. Keeping the engines running for hours on end was the responsibility of the flight engineer. From his cramped compartment within the wing support, he communicated with the pilot through a system of indicator lights.
The only thing the pilot has regarding the engines in the cockpit are the throttles. Everything else is back there in a tower. He relies on his engineer.
It was the navigator's role to chart their course and ensure the safe return of the aircraft.
It's nice to know where you are. Every once in a while, a crew member that wasn't doing anything would come up and look over your shoulder and said, "Where are we?" Well, you put your finger, right there. But they did trust you, no doubt about it. But sometime, you're going to be lost. You won't know where you are. So what do? You turn around and go back, and you don't know where to go back to? Do you think, well, my sense tells me that land is over there and water's over here, or what do?
In poor weather conditions, this could become an almost impossible challenge. Many lone Catalinas disappeared without a trace in the vast Pacific Ocean. The radio operator served as the only connection to the outside world. His Morse code signals would send critical early warnings of enemy activity back to the base. Soon, the Catalina crews would play a pivotal role in the legendary sea battle that would alter the entire trajectory of the war in the Pacific: Midway.
Midway Island. Not much land, right enough, but it's our outpost. A Navy patrol plane. Routine patrol. Only behind every cloud may be an enemy.
Following the calamity at Pearl Harbor, the Japanese continued to push back American forces across the Pacific. In June 1942, the Imperial Japanese Navy dispatched a massive task force to seize American-held Midway Island, located 1,100 miles northwest of Pearl Harbor. The primary goal was to lure the remaining ships of the U.S. Pacific Fleet into a confrontation and destroy them. However, the Japanese codes had been deciphered, and the defenders were aware that an attack was imminent. What they didn't know was the precise location of the task force.
Up until the Battle of Midway, the U.S. Navy, quite frankly, was not having a good war. They had only been able to score some hit-and-run raids against Japanese islands. So the Battle of Midway was very much a showdown in which the U.S. Navy was going to put it all on the line to stop the Japanese fleet.
On the morning of June 3rd, a Catalina patrol aircraft located the leading vessels of the Japanese task force. At dawn the next day, another Catalina finally identified the remaining ships, including the aircraft carriers. A large contingent of American carrier planes took off to engage the Japanese battle fleet. However, the waves of dive bombers faced superior Japanese fighters and suffered devastating losses. Then, in just 10 minutes, the tide shifted dramatically. American dive bombers targeted 3 Japanese aircraft carriers while their decks were crowded with planes being rearmed and refueled. Without air cover, the massive carriers became easy targets and quickly succumbed to American assaults. Later that day, a 4th Japanese aircraft carrier was also lost. Midway represented a catastrophic defeat for the Japanese and marked a pivotal turning point in the Pacific War at sea. At last, U.S. forces achieved a decisive victory, marking the first time the Japanese were forced onto the defensive.
In the Battle of Midway, there were some elements that played a great role, and certainly that was finding where the Japanese fleet was. And code breaking played a role in that, but it still required an aircraft to spot the ships. And it was here that the PBY played a pivotal role in the battle, because it was PBYs that spotted not only the invasion force destined for Midway, but more importantly, spotted the carrier force.
The Catalina had demonstrated its capabilities beyond any doubt, but even before the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Navy had already commissioned its intended successor.
The battleship of the air, the Coronado, the mightiest seaborne aircraft now in service.
The Coronado, known as the Battleship of the Air, was the most formidable seaborne aircraft ever constructed. This 4-engine Coronado was significantly larger and more advanced, yet it cost 3 times as much to produce as the Catalina and was a very intricate machine. In contrast, the Cat was straightforward to manufacture in large quantities, allowing it to remain the Navy's primary workhorse. Much like Henry Ford's Model T, it was slow but reliable and got the job done. However, every crewman flying a Catalina understood that, despite its armament, the sluggish Cat had little chance of surviving an encounter with Japanese fighters. Those long and solitary ocean patrols became some of the most perilous missions of the entire Pacific War.
The Catalina has been called the cruiser of the air. Her wing spread is 105 feet. Her length from nose to tail is 65 feet. She can carry a load of many tons. Her range, fully loaded, is over 4,000 miles, and the PBYs, new and old, have stood up to all the tasks imposed by modern war.
Yet, sometimes, the odds were simply insurmountable. During his first combat patrol in August 1942, Bob Dimmitt's Catalina was unexpectedly attacked by 3 Japanese fighters.
They were real show-offs. They would corkscrew in and roll I watched one of them coming in on our tail there, and he was just lazily doing rolls and shooting at us. I guess they figured that this was a big duck and it was going. Our radioman was killed. He was sitting right behind me. The mechanic was shot through the chest, and those were the two big casualties that we had. The rest of us all had small shrapnel in us.
Then, just as quickly as they had appeared, the Japanese Zeros vanished. One man was killed, another was severely wounded, and the Cat sustained significant damage.
And when we got away from there, our port engine was starting to burn. But that sucker flew, and we noticed some dots on the horizon. Never saw such pretty pieces of palm trees in our life.
Somehow, they managed to crash land the injured Catalina in shallow water, skidding to a stop on the beach.
We stopped. Then we started getting kind of worried, because we really didn't know at that time where we were and whether it was friendly or enemy. So we climbed out of the airplane and stood there with our big 45s in our hands and waited.
After a week stranded on their tropical island, Bob Dimmitt and his crew began to wonder how long they could endure before assistance arrived or the Japanese came.
All of a sudden we see this dot just off the water underneath this black cloud heading right for us, and it looked like a seaplane. Well, at that time we didn't know whether it was a Japanese seaplane or whether it was an American seaplane, so we didn't do anything. And we waited and waited and waited till the last minute, and then we could finally make out that it was a Catalina. And we were jumping up and down and yelling at him, but Santa Claus has nothing on that airplane. The relief that you feel when you have a friend that just flies by like that, there is, well, you can't describe it. We know then that we're home free.
All but one of Bob's crew made it through the ordeal, thanks to the Catalina. Such close calls had a lasting impact.
Hey, I got news for you. They were all brothers under the skin, boy, after that one there, and there was no doubt about that. We stayed close for a long time. Yeah.
Usually bonding shows up after an incident or an accident. If the pilot manages to evade and get the plane back without being shot down, he is the biggest thing in the world to that crew. So now they've bonded to the pilot, and the crew has bonded together as one. You could see it happen, and when I was on the islands in the South Pacific and the PBYs would come back from their patrol, you could tell that there's a changeover. All of a sudden, they're like brothers. You can't come between them.
Not surprisingly, every American GI in the Pacific grew fond of the Cat. Its recognizable and reassuring silhouette in the sky was always a welcome sight. For troops isolated on remote coral islands, it meant receiving mail from home. For the injured, it brought crucial medical supplies and a ride to the safety of a base hospital. For survivors adrift for days in the vast ocean, it symbolized life itself. And for the men who piloted it, the Cat became part of the family.
Oh, yes. Every hop we came back on, the airplane was our baby. We loved it. We put it to bed at night, wake it up in the morning, and if we had any long flights, it never occurred to us that anything was going to go wrong.
The Cats operated in the most basic conditions, and their crews learned to be almost completely self-sufficient.
You had to be self-sufficient. And those planes were on their own. They'd be at some out-of-the-way island in a cove, and there'd be some 55-gallon drums of fuel and some oil. You lived in the plane, and you ate, cooked, and lived in the plane.
Whether on land or at sea, the big cats were most susceptible to Japanese air attacks between their missions. However, many of their forward bases were carved out of the jungle and not easily visible from above. The long-distance missions across the Pacific placed immense stress on the aircraft and the dedicated ground crews who kept them operational with only the most rudimentary tools.
Preventative maintenance is the secret to the whole thing. The old saying goes, you can't pull off the road and call for a wrecker. If you have a problem and you lose an engine, you're going to have to return to base. You have a full crew, full ammo, full gas load. Perish the thought that you lose an engine on takeoff.
The remote jungle bases lacked workshop facilities, but this did not deter the Catalina. It came equipped with its own set of folding work platforms that could be attached to the engines.
There you were on a platform. You could work in the whole accessory section.
After a specified number of flight hours, each engine required a thorough inspection.
Each check would be more intense. And you hate to see them coming because that meant that it was going to be work. Not just flying, it was going to be work. You had to get yourself 30. And then you would have the 30, 60, 90, and 120-hour check. Now, 120 hours takes quite a long time. That's 120 hours in the air. Now the airplane's going to be down for a couple of days. In wartime, that's not really well thought of, but it has to happen. So you can imagine that there's a lot of fellas, a lot of mechanics, really running all over that airplane to get it back in the air. That's one thing a pilot doesn't want, is to have his airplane on the deck. It's not what it's built for.
A strong bond formed between the pilot and the chief engineer, as lives depended on their combined expertise. Before every mission, they would meticulously inspect the aircraft together.
It's the rapport that you develop with the pilot. And if you're the chief aboard, or if you're the senior man aboard, or if you're the flight engineer, you're a little bit closer to the pilot than the rest of the crew. He'll come to you first. But he's still in charge. I realized I was the man behind the wrench. I wasn't the man up front driving. Pilot drives it. I fix it.
It's an airplane that you could fix with duct tape or something like that. If it had been too complicated, it wouldn't have been able to do the job.
Yet this reliable companion could also reveal a much more aggressive aspect of its character. When night fell, the gentle cat would turn into a formidable predator.
Guadalcanal is the most hotly contested strip of land in the South Pacific. For 5 months have tried to win back this vital outpost, but their transports, bombed and beached, lie wrecked on the sands of the Solomon Islands.
While Midway marked a turning point at sea, it was Guadalcanal in the Solomon Islands that ultimately halted the Japanese ground advance. The situation was dire, as the Japanese funneled troops and supplies into battle, desperately attempting to push American forces back into the sea. The success of the entire Japanese operation hinged on regular supply runs conducted by a fleet of transport ships operating under the cover of night, protected by destroyers and light cruisers known as the Tokyo Express. The only chance for an American victory lay in severing this vital supply line. This goal was ultimately achieved with the assistance of an unexpected weapon.
Anything familiar? That torso with a middle-aged sag? Her speed less than some cars can do. Got her? Right. The old cat. Navy Catalina patrol boat, PBY in a black nightgown for night camouflage. A black cat.
It was called the Black Cat because they flew at night, and the plane was painted perfectly black.
Despite its age, the Catalina was leading the way in a new type of covert operation that would become an increasingly significant aspect of modern warfare.
During the day, to launch a PBY on any sort of attack mission would have been suicide because it was a slow and lumbering aircraft. But those attributes made it really particularly suited to night combat, where it could loiter over targets and search for them really at will.
For every pound of bombs dropped last month, 1 ton of enemy shipping was sunk or damaged. Records like that mean plenty in any language, dollars or yen.
The concept was simple, yet highly effective. Take a standard PBY Catalina patrol plane, coat it in matte black from nose to tail, conceal its glowing exhaust pipes above the wings, and switch off all navigation lights. Then attach 4,000 pounds of bombs under its wings, transforming it into a formidable weapon. This was the Black Cat, the original stealth bomber.
Another night, another mission, another prowl into the dark. A cat needs its 9 lives on these jobs.
Back at Pearl Harbor, the surprise attack by the Japanese had severely weakened the Catalina fleet. Now, shrouded in darkness, the Cats sought their revenge. This time, it would be the Japanese who were caught off guard. These long-range missions were always tense and exhausting for the Catalina crews.
Skipper always had us doing things. And he'd say, you guys in the blisters, I want you to keep an eye out. And if he ever saw anything, and we didn't see it first, we was in bad trouble. we reported seeing something before he did, or he'd said, all right, what's going on back there? Do you guys sound asleep?
Without radar, the Japanese forces struggled to detect the Cats in the darkness. Even powerful searchlights often failed to reveal their presence, leaving defenders to fire blindly into the night sky in hopes of hitting something.
The searchlight would be right on us, and nobody shot at us. The searchlight come right on, and everything gets all light up in the plane. Said, "Uh-oh!" We just kept right on going, and the light went off somewhere else. So they never did see us. Never would see us.
The attacks had to be executed on the first pass to maintain the element of surprise. But the slow-flying Cat had ample opportunity to align itself with the target.
You know, we dropped bombs. We dropped everything we had. And I don't know, because we never did, nobody ever went down to see what had happened because that was Japanese territory.
1 more flight completed. 1 less convoy flying the rising sun. Another loss in losses adding up to billions of dollars in equipment that didn't get there.
In just 1 month, a single squadron reported the destruction of 43 Japanese ships as the Black Cats prowled the night skies, most of their victims unaware of what had struck them. Deprived of essential supplies, the Japanese lost their hold on the Solomon Islands and began a long and bloody retreat back to their home islands. At a pivotal moment in history, the Black Cat squadrons, engaging in nighttime hunting and bombing missions, played a crucial role in turning the tide of the war in the Pacific.
A job done by planes that can't maneuver but do, that can't dive, that can't rev up speed to wiggle out of a run but go in anyway for a second try, a third. And every less ship gives the men who are landing a better break. That's what keeps the Cats flying.
When production ceased, nearly 4,000 Catalinas had been constructed, making it the most numerous flying boat ever created.
In a variety of services with a variety of nations, the PBY did everything in almost every theater of war. It dropped bombs, it dropped torpedoes, it depth-charged U-boats, it fired retro rockets. It was the Dumbo for down flyers, the salvation and savior for them when they're floating in the open ocean with little chance of rescue without the PBY. So in short, the PBY performed all missions that it was called upon to do and performed them with great ability.
After the war, while many military aircraft were scrapped, the Cats continued to serve due to their immense utility. Wherever there was water, the Catalina found a peacetime role, conducting Coast Guard patrols, firefighting, cargo transport, passenger flights, exploration, surveying, and a multitude of other tasks. Though the jet age marked the decline of most remaining flying boats, the Cats persevered. As the new millennium approached, the Consolidated PBY Catalina remained in the air, one of the longest-serving and most beloved aircraft in history.
That airplane, I fell in love with it.
All I could say was, Mr. Consolidated, you did a hell of a job.
Night waters of the Southwest Pacific, enemy waters, sea roads for the passage of Japanese armaments going south to smash U.S. troops fighting for island beaches. Domain of the escort destroyer, guarding convoys of anti-aircraft, machine guns, concrete for pillboxes. Then, one night, suddenly, mysteriously, 2 ships were wiped out of a convoy. 1 ship left burning. 1 sunk. This was only the beginning. In 1 month, 41,000 tons of Japanese cargo vessels were sunk, 43,000 damaged. Next month, 13 ships attacked, 6 damaged, 7 sunk. News of the losses leak out. Radio Tokyo invents alibis. New American superplanes reported in the Pacific, surpassing anything known in speed and maneuverability. Reverberations in the Japanese High Command. New detachments of night fighters called up. Japanese fleet adjustments made. More destroyers, cruisers for convoy escort. The attacker was an unidentified American plane hitting at night. They bombed the destroyers, light cruisers, heavy cruisers. What is this superplane? Anything familiar? That torso with a middle-aged sag? Her speed less than some cars can do. Maneuverable? Some days all right. On others she brings around like a 10-ton truck. She dives under protest. Wings can't handle half the pressure dive bombers take. Got her? Right. The old Cat, Navy Catalina patrol boat, PBY in a black nightgown for night camouflage. A black cat. She hides by day in one of the secret U.S. Navy cat bases, which the enemy would love to know about. It's 8 a.m. Base personnel watching for a black cat overdue. Last heard from at midnight, attacking a Japanese merchant ship. But they don't watch long. Here comes the cat, and it's a zoom, a signal that she did it again. One more enemy ship on the bottom. Plowing around for the lee shore now and quiet waters. A wait for the tow line. Up the ramp, tail first. The squadron commander, wanting to know any wounded? After 14 hours of flight. Commodore Combs, commander of the task force, arrives in his jeep with Captain Peck in charge of the group. Large freighter made 2 bombing runs. Exploded ammunition cargo. Now off to get details and new plans for the coming night's mission. And that beer, which all hands look forward to. But there's 1 bottle left over. A Navy cameraman hit on the first run, so no pictures. But tonight's another night with a mate to take his place. As soon as the cat's home, she's groomed for the next prowl. That's a blitz buggy towing her into position for overhaul. Some job for a maintenance officer keeping an aerial antique acting like a dive bomber. The bad symptoms sheet. Port propeller throwing oil. Nothing serious, but a new part is needed. These cats take plenty. Some here are nearly 4 years old. Now, 8 bullet holes, starboard wing. 6, 7, 8. Not so bad. Black cats have wheezed home with more than 100 holes showing through their sides. It came out here, the shrapnel that nicked our cameraman. Such holes are penciled first, clipped, a plate board, riveted. A leak in the fuel tank plug. Gas goes in. Don't ration it. We'll be up all night and part of the next day. Last night's strain told on the tail assembly. Repaired now, wagging her tail and raring to go. But first, she needs her claws sharpened. The Black Cat's bomb dump. Quarter-tonners. And this, the size Japanese cruisers have a weakness for. 50 calibers, defense against Japanese fighters tonight. The tail fin screwed on tight. When you swan dive through anti-aircraft, you want bombs that lay in right. Back to the cat. Patrol boats weren't made for bombing. She wears them under her wing because there's no other place. For every pound of bombs dropped last month, 1 ton of enemy shipping was sunk or damaged. Records like that mean plenty in any language, dollars or yen. Now a tin fish for the port wing. And the 50 caliber just in case, but we'd rather not have to use it. Darkness is the cat's best defense. Darkness and her black nightgown. But the guns are checked. And the cat stands ready, feeling her years, but as fit for combat as good wishes can make her. But first, looking for a stowaway aft. Yes, 2 kinds of black cats at this base. Overside you. In the meantime, the crew we're flying with in an hour is off for a spot of water polo. Coconuts to you. Now a quick look in on the officers' quarters. Our cat's masters, that's the squadron commander at the mirror. Big game hunters at night, but the housekeeping has to be done. Evening clothes, 45s, jungle knives, just in case luck runs out and you have to walk home. And the picture. Off for briefing. Final instructions. Final warnings. Six black cats will fly tonight. They're pilots and navigators. First discussion, new angles of enemy strategy. To draw more blood from U.S. invading troops, Japan is feeding key defenses with ammunition, guns, concrete for pillboxes. Our objective, to stop them at sea, where one bomb can sink what 100 bombing runs ashore might not destroy. Latest enemy convoy sighting, southbound, 1 tanker, 3 freighters, probably artillery and ammunition, estimated position at 0200. Watch out for Japanese night fighters, nearest airstrip only 60 miles away. Any destroyer escorts? 2 cans like this, 5-inch guns, elevation for anti-aircraft barrage, 2 aft, 1 forward. 2 ack topside, and you may have a light cruiser on your hands, 1 sighted yesterday in that area. The search plan for locating the convoy. Area A for the command plane. Area B. Whoever spots the convoy first will signal other planes immediately, including the 2 standby planes. Command plane will direct attack. On the way north, the command plane will search enemy-held Harbor X, where the convoy may have dropped anchor temporarily. Watch out for land ack, there's plenty. A nest of 6 heavies to the north. 2 heavies here, 4 mediums south. Last topic, weather. On some nights, even more of a headache than ack. Storm fronts building up to the north, 30-knot headwinds to fight on the way home. Turn back early. If the night clears, don't make a target out of yourself by getting in front of the moon. Now, a half hour left for some quick chow. Command plane overside in 5 minutes. Sandwich makings from home. California sardines, Chicago ham spread, orange juice from Florida to wash it down. A squall bearing down from the sea, but the cats leave per schedule. In all the space's history, foul weather has never stopped a flight. He slides in, hull settling deep under bomb-laden wings. Landing gear disengaged, wallowing out for the takeoff. Heeling away into the run, motors growling over the job of lifting too many men off the water. Too much gas, but she's up on the step. Gear off. Another night, another mission, another prowl into the dark. A cat needs its 9 lives on these jobs. Night, and the weather kicks up. Rough enough to be airsick if you had time. But getting nearer Harbor X, where the convoy might be hiding out, weather or no weather, the cat gives up altitude to find out. Navigator to captain, Harbor X reckoned 10 miles ahead. Repeat to waist gunners. Harbor X, 3 miles off port bow. A lookout posted in the Black Cat's nose. A last check of the land ack positions ahead. The moon breaks through, silhouetting the cat. Enemy fighter planes coming up, Captain. Harbor X dead ahead. No convoy down there. Lower for a second look. Harbor X empty. Convoy still out at sea. Now to get out, quick. But we're spotted. We took one. Another. Night fighters hard off port beam. Stand by for a dive to hide. The cat flattens out. Here's where a black nightgown counts. The Japanese need better glasses. Now a cautious bank to sea to resume convoy search. Convoy's original O200 position was 50 miles, bearing 5 degrees. Convoy off port bow. Tail end of the convoy, ammunition freighter. Position signaled to 5 other black cats, 0420 south, 15012 east. The plane veers into the wake of the cruiser. Other cats arrive. Pick our angle on the cruiser. Then pounce. Press the pickle and lay an egg. A hit. Miss. Another run. A hit. Lane 3 goes in. Now the cats get out, with 1 freighter sunk, 1 damaged, 1 tanker burning, a cruiser hit. The cost, Black Cat number 5, whose 9th life went up in the smoke of the freighter she sank. One more flight completed. 1 less convoy flying the rising sun. Another loss in losses adding up to billions of dollars in equipment that didn't get there. A job done by planes that can't maneuver but do, that can't dive, that can't rev up speed to wiggle out of a run but go in anyway for a second try, a third. What keeps them going? This, among other things, these are American troops grabbing at a beach guarded by pillboxes and machine guns, by Japanese cannon, mortars, grenades. These things don't grow there. They come in ships that can be sunk, and every less ship gives the men who are landing a better break. That's what keeps the cats flying.